Now while you're watching this video, please remember to like, share this video, subscribe to my channel and click the bell icon for notifications of future videos. Thank you. Here, welcome back to my channel, guys. Yes, I have yet again another exciting video for you. And as you can see, the title suggests, can women be deacons in the church? This is what we want to talk about in this video. Now, I've been concentrating on women and what they can and can't do in the church for quite some time now. Ever since I did a video titled, Can Women Be Pastors or Bishops? Right? Where I affirm them being pastors but not bishop. Right? I have decided from then on to look at a number of texts that persons oftentimes use to say that women can't be pastors, and I've addressed three of them, two from the New Testament and one from the Old, right? Where I show you that these verses that are being used, right, when taken in context, we see that it's not disapproving women from having any position of authority at all in the church, right? They can indeed exercise authority in the church, but where their authority stops, right, is at pastor then, so to speak. They cannot be a bishop in the church, so they can exercise just about a degree of authority, but there's a limit to how much authority they can hold in the church. So the Bible is not saying that they cannot have any authority at all in the church. What it is saying is that the position of overseer, wherein they are the head over the churches and so forth, that is not a position that women can hold in the church, right? No, the whole idea of women being deacons in the church, we're going to look at what the Bible has to say about the office of a deacon, and we are going to read from 1 Timothy chapter 3 verses 8 onwards. And I'll be reading from, let me see, which translation should I use? Let me use the ESV for now. Deacons likewise must be dignified, not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine, not greedy for dishonest gain. They must hold the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience, and let them also be tested first. Then let them serve as deacons, if they prove themselves blameless. Their wives likewise must be dignified, not slanderers, but sober-minded, faithful in all things. Right? Let deacons each be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their household well. For those who serve well as deacons gain a good standing for themselves and also great confidence in the faith that is in Christ Jesus. So, just by reading these verses, the verse that person oftentimes latch on to more than anything else is verse 12, where it says, let deacons each be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their own households well. Now the KJV says, let the deacons be the husband of one wife, ruling their children and their houses well. So when it's talking about ruling, it's giving the connotation that that persons in this office of deacon, they rule their house, and it's given to men to basically be the ruler or the head of their household. And when it's saying that let the deacons be the husband of one wife, it seems to suggest that the office of deacon, it is solely reserved for males only, right? And if I should be honest, these are some good reasons to say such. But when you look at the Bible as a whole, right, in terms of what it reveals, where deacon is concerned, we can see something else being conveyed, right? Something else that suggests that the office of deacon, it is not reserved only for males. We are going to look at these things that I'm talking about and let you be the judge as to whether the office of a deacon, if it's reserved only for males alone. Now, with 1 Timothy 3 verse 12, where it says that let the deacons be the husband of one wife, ruling their children and their own house as well. When you read from the ESV, it says let deacons each be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their own households well, right? It uses the term managing, whereas KJV says ruling. Now, when you read 1 Timothy 5, verse 14, I'm going to look at both the KJV and the ESV. The KJV says, I will therefore that the younger women marry, bear children, guide the house, give none occasion to the adversary to speak reproachfully. The ESV says, so I would have younger widows marry, bear children, manage their household, and give the adversary no occasion to slander. So the ESV can't use the term managing their household, right? This is after they marry and bear children. They should manage their household and give the adversary no occasion to slander. Now in 1 Timothy 3 verse 12, it says, it says, let the deacons each be husband of one wife, managing their children and their own household. So when you compare from the ESV, 1 Timothy 3 verse 12 and 1 Timothy 5 verse 14, both it says the man should manage their children and their household well, and yet still it's saying the woman should manage their own household. Right? So what this is saying, that both parties are supposed to manage their household. Whether it be the man or the woman, they both should manage their own household. The issue we're having here, is in the usage of words, So when a KJV only is see the term rule, that's a strong language being used by the KJV, from 1 Timothy 3 verse 12. So using such strong language, then it pops up in a person's mind, this has to be something reserved only for men because of the strong language rule being used there, right? And a woman can't rule over a husband. So that's the issue here, the usage of word. But when you hear the KJV says manage your own household, it is a much softer word being used. And when you see the same word manage again, right, back in 1 Timothy 5 verse 14, that women should manage their household, it now brings to mind that both parties, right, should manage their own household. Both parties can't rule, right? So the issue is really with the usage of words, because both parties can't rule their household. It's for the man to basically rule, but both parties can manage their household. So this is the issue that we have here, the usage of translation, right? Or how different translation translate the text. So this is what is causing the confusion here. So now that I have cleared up that part, right, we are going to look at the Greek word for we are going to look at the Greek word for rule, right? As a matter of fact, the word for rule in 1 Timothy 3 verse 12 can also mean maintain, right? The word for rule in there can mean maintain. That's another definition, maintain. So if you put the word maintain in verse 12 from the KJV, let the deacons be husband of one wife, maintaining their children and their own houses well. So a much softer word there, being used in a maintain, manage, the same thing, but Yes, so what we are going to do, now is we are going to look at the Greek word for deacon. Now the word deacon comes from a word that means diakonos, right? As in that's the pronunciation of the Greek word used for deacon. Now it means to run on errands, right? An attendant that is generally a waiter at a table or in other menial duties. Specifically a Christian teacher and pastor. Technically a deacon or deaconess. Now notice the word here, put in bracket, that deacon, it can be used as deaconess. So the word itself, the meaning alone tell you that it's not only for males, and you're going to see why as we continue further in the video, right? So the word deacon or diakonos can also be translated as deacon, minister, and servant, right? So even pastor, based off the definition, a pastor can also serve as a deacon as well. Or you could even call a pastor a deacon, or a common Christian teacher can be a deacon, right? Because the whole purpose of deacon is basically to serve or to minister, right? Now, the word diakonos is used, as said before, translated as minister and servant as well. Only 3 times it's ever translated as deacon. 20 times as minister, 8 times as servant. Yes, guys, what we're going to do, I'm going to give you some examples of deacon or diakonos being translated. That way you can see how the word is actually used, and you'll see for yourself that it is not something that is reserved only for males. This is why the Greek word, you see it put in bracket, deacon or deaconess, which signifies women. You're going to see it for yourself as we look at how the word is used. First, we're going to look at John chapter 12, verse 26. It says, "If any man serve me, let him follow me. And where I am, there shall also my servant," my diakonos. It's diakonos used there. There, where I am, there also my diakonos, our servant, be. If any man serve me, him will my Father honor. Now the question to ask, when Jesus said this, was he only talking to males? Right? Was he only talking to males when he said if any man serve me? Obviously not. He was not talking to males alone. Right? Yes, he wasn't talking to males alone, right, guys? Because Jesus is not only calling males to follow him, he wants female to follow him. And if both males and female follow him according to this text, there also shall his diakonos, male and female, be. I could practically end the video right there, There also shall my diakonos, my minister, my servant, my deacon be, or deaconess be. Right? There also shall they be. Now let's look at the word serve. Right? Or let's look at a different Greek word that means to serve or means servant. There's another Greek word used that means servant, right? And it is slave. Right? It's doulos, and it means a slave, literally or figuratively, involuntarily or voluntarily, frequently, therefore in a qualified sense of subjection or subserviency. So whether it be voluntary or involuntarily, this servant or slave subjects themselves. So that is what doulos mean, a servant. And this word is used quite often, right, in the New Testament in reference to a servant, right? Let me give you an example. Mark 13 verse 34. "For the Son of Man is as a man taking a far journey, who left his house and gave authority to his servants, and to every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch." So the word servants, when it says gave authority to his servants, it is doulos that is used there, right? He gives authority to his servants and every man his work, and commanded the porter to watch. Now the question to ask is, does Jesus give work only to males? Does he gives work only to males? If servants here, it's talking only about males, then you are saying then that Jesus gave work and authority only to males, and Jesus never gave males alone a work to do. He wants both male and female to be co-laborers, right? In basically spreading the gospel. So you see, doulos is the word that is actually used in Mark 13 verse 34. This word doulos is translated 120 times in the New Testament as servant. 120 times. I could give you scores more example, but I'm using that one alone, right? Now, the question to ask, right, as we are about to look at a few other verses. Guys, I'm going to show you a few more examples here. Looking at 1 Corinthians 3 verse 5, it says, who then is Paul and who is Apollos, but ministers by whom he believed, even as the Lord gave to every man. So it's telling you that Paul and Apollos are basically ministers, right? It's the same Greek word diakonos being used there, for ministers, right? You could say, but deacons are but servants by whom he believed, even as the Lord gave to every man. So you see that it don't really make a difference whether you say minister or whether you say servant or whether you say deacon. It all means one and the same thing. And as I have stated before, just by looking at the word, it says that it says the Greek word for diakonos, meaning specifically a Christian teacher or a pastor. Just about anyone can be a diakonos. It doesn't matter your office, you can still be considered as a diakonos. Paul was basically an apostle, and it is being said that they are diakonos, ministers. You understand? You find the same thing with Timothy. In 1 Thessalonians 3 verse 2, Timothy is basically said to be minister of God, right? A minister of God, a diakonos of God, and we know that Timothy was a bishop, right? Timothy was a bishop. So this word diakonos can be applied to just about anyone. This is why you see in bracket deacon or deaconess. It is not something reserved only, right, for males. Another case in point, let me give you another example here, and this is basically going to be the last example that I use in Romans chapter 16. You know I can't miss this one, right, where it talks about Phoebe. I'm going to read from the KJV here, right? It says, I commend unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a servant of the church. The word servant there means diakonos. I commend unto you Phoebe, our sister, which is a diakonos of the church, right? That he receive her in the Lord as becometh saints, and that he assist her in whatsoever business she hath need of you. For she hath been a succorer of many, and of myself also. Now, it is interesting to note that I mentioned to you about another Greek word, doulos, that is translated 120 times in the New Testament as servant, right? And you realize that Paul didn't use the word doulos here when he was basically speaking of Phoebe, right? Instead, he used the word diakonos. Now, one would say that perhaps this might have been, Paul might have not saw it as anything different, or maybe they would be saying in themselves that perhaps for Paul, right, it doesn't really matter which word is used. But I would differ on that, and here's why. If you look at the context of these two verses, right, the word commend there can also mean basically, the Greek word for it means to introduce favorably, right? To approve. So Paul is saying that I approve unto you Phoebe, or I introduce unto you favorably Phoebe, right? So in other words, Paul was basically giving accreditation then to Phoebe, right? That's what Paul was actually doing. He was giving accreditation to Phoebe. The word becometh in verse 2, the Greek word for becometh here means, it can be translated as worthy. It is used 3 times as worthy, 2 times as becometh, and once as godly. Right? So when you look at the other translators such as the ESV, it says that you may welcome her in a way worthy of the saints. Right? The NLT says welcome her in the Lord as one who is worthy of honor among God's people. Help her in whatever she needs, for she has been helpful to many and especially to me. Phoebe was basically being accredited by Paul, and if the essence of what he's saying is basically to give accreditation to Phoebe, it would make more sense for him to use the word diakonos, right, than to use the word doulos, because Phoebe, clearly as you can see, is not an ordinary servant. And if she's not an ordinary servant, it makes it all the more appropriate to use the word diakonos than to use the word doulos. And we can see clearly that diakonos, it is a much stronger word than doulos. Because diakonos means then you're not basically an ordinary servant. You're above. The word diakonos, as opposed to doulos, you're above your regular servant. So in other words, a diakonos provides a level of servitude, right, that is beyond the average servant, which is doulos, right? And when you really think about it, it makes all the more sense for Paul to put the word diakonos there, because for Phoebe, this letter, by the way, to the Romans, it was written in Corinth, and it was sent by the hand of Phoebe. This is a high level of trust being placed upon Phoebe. This could not have been given to just about anyone, you understand, to deliver such an important letter from one district to another district. You have to be someone in a position of trust, and that was Phoebe. Right, guys? But persons will latch on to 1 Timothy 3 when it's talking about the deacons having being the husband of one wife, and so on, and so they would limit it only to males. No. Just because you see it says that the deacons must be husbands of one wife, it doesn't mean, right, that it is something that is reserved only, right, for males. And I'm going to read a couple of bits on 1 Timothy 3. This is how we are going to come to a close now. Let's look at the verses that talks about deacons, right? And let's have some reason here where deacons is concerned. Looking at the ESV, deacons must also be dignified, right? Shouldn't women be dignified? And let me ask you a question here. Do you think that Phoebe was dignified? Not double-tongued, not addicted to much wine, not greedy for dishonest gain. Do you think that Phoebe was a double-tongued person? Right? Do you think that Phoebe was given to much wine? Do you think that Phoebe was greedy for dishonest gain? Next it says they must hold the mystery of the faith with a clear conscience. Do you think that Phoebe would have qualified here? Let's go again, verse 10. Let them also be tested first, then let them serve as deacons if they prove themselves blameless. Do you think that Phoebe was tested? Do you think that Phoebe was proven blameless? Right? These are some questions that I'm giving you to basically answer, Right? Now I know that verse 11 is going to rub a lot of persons a lot of way. You soon hear that I'm a false teacher. Now it says that their wives likewise must be dignified, not slanderers, but sober-minded, faithful in all things. Do you think that Phoebe, well, we don't know that if she was married or not, so I guess I can't say much on this, but if she was, Do you think that Phoebe, a person of her standard, based on how the Bible depicts her, she was someone that was worthy? You understand? Do you think that she would have chosen a husband to herself that is not dignified, that is a slanderer, that isn't sober-minded, right? Or faithful in all things? I mean, if you're going to date a woman like Phoebe, someone who serves so much in the church, you're going to have a problem, as a man, right? If it is that you don't have the same mindset as her. So I doubt that if Phoebe was actually married, she would choose someone that doesn't exhibit the same characteristics as herself, because if she does, there is no way the marriage would actually work out, right? Now let's look at verse 12. It says, let the deacons be the husband of one wife, managing their children and their household well. And we read in 1 Timothy 5 verse 14, right? So I would have younger women married, bear children, manage their households, right? So the same thing is basically said of women. Just as how the man is supposed to manage his household, it is in the same way women should also manage their household. So you see, this is clear, guys, and very, very clear cut, that deacons or diakonos, it is not reserved only for males. It is an office that can be occupied by both male and female, right? I think that is clear enough. The only position I see from scripture, based on my understanding, that a woman cannot occupy so far is basically the office of a bishop, right? Hardly can anyone reason out that and say that women can be bishop, right? So with that being said, and by the way, if you haven't checked out my videos on women being bishop and so forth, I have a playlist that talks about the role of women in the church. Check out the videos that are there alongside with this. With that being said, bye bye now.